The year 2016 saw one of Hearthstone's most interesting and controversial balance changes. They didn't alter the power level of a card, or even one of the heroes. Instead, Blizzard decided to remove an emote. Specifically, the sorry emote, which was deemed too powerful for mortal hands and deleted from the game entirely. But why? Well, it was because although the intent of the emote was to allow players to apologise for taking too long on their turn, or for commiserating with an opponent who just made a mistake, more often than not, players just used it sarcastically to aggravate their opponent or to mentally screw with them. Sorry isn't the only emote that got changed either. There used to be an emote that let you call the opponent lucky, which went down about as well as you'd expect, and one for saying good game, which exclusively got used to preemptively call a win, and was changed to the much more complimentary well played. Emotes in Hearthstone were introduced in order to try and curb the kind of toxicity and rudeness that normally emerges in multiplayer games, but even after all those changes, players are still using emotes to be toxic by spamming them while stalling out games or using the thanks emote sarcastically to express their gratitude for an easy win. Needless to say, communication systems in games are complicated. Without them, we'd lose that crucial feeling of cooperative or competitive pressure that makes multiplayer games so fun. However, they also enable a bunch of unfriendliness and toxicity that can drive players away from games they'd otherwise enjoy. To make matters worse, the two default means of communication in games, text and voice, are probably the worst offenders, particularly in public games where you're talking with randos on the internet and not your friends. In textual communication, it's almost impossible to tell the difference between sarcasm, jokes, and genuine sentiment, and it takes ages to say anything of substance. Voice chat, on the other hand, not only requires you to own a high enough quality mic to accurately communicate your thoughts, but it also lacks anonymity. As anyone who's not a white dude in their 20s to 30s will attest, using voice comms is a dicey proposition and can open people up to a whole spectrum of abuse, ranging from your classic "I fucked your mum" to more specific bigotry involving very special gamer words beginning with the letter N. Nincompoop, obviously. So, if text and voice are bad methods of communication, and even the most well-meaning alternatives can be subverted, what hope is there for developing communication systems that allow players to strategize, build up healthy rivalries, and convey their ideas clearly without also enabling people who'd end up being abusive? Well, I think the first step is in understanding that these problems are linked. Whilst people on the internet are basically always going to behave like dicks when they're shielded by a username, toxicity is made worse in situations where people are A, unable to communicate their thoughts and feelings clearly without resorting to insults, and B, are rewarded for being a dick and for riling people up. If you want proof, just look at how YouTube comments or social media sites like Twitter, with short message lengths and a culture that incentivizes engaging only with the most emotive messages, creates nothing but petty slap fights, tribalism, and misinformation. So, by allowing people to communicate clearly and efficiently, as well as pushing them to be nicer, hopefully we can help to curb the rising tide of internet toxicity. Let's start by taking a look at non-verbal communication methods like emotes, gestures, and emergent communication. While Hearthstone's implementation is far from perfect, systems like emotes solve a very important problem, and that's giving players the ability to communicate emotions quickly and efficiently without needing to yell down a mic or risk being misinterpreted via text. Giving players the ability to communicate what they're feeling as well as what they're thinking is hugely important, as it allows for nuanced social interactions that actually increase the depth of an experience rather than just making it easier to play. Back when I first played the World of Warcraft Legion expansion, I was running around on my Demon Hunter killing harpies when I ran into a much higher level character from the Filthy Horde also doing the same quest. Normally, in World of Warcraft, players from opposing factions are encouraged to attack each other on sight and can't talk to each other through the in-game chat. It's not called World of Peacecraft for a reason. Because I almost certainly would have lost this engagement, I ran away, which led to something really interesting happening. This Tauren monk spotted me, walked over to where I was hiding, and performed the wave gesture, communicating that they'd spotted me, but weren't going to attack. I waved back, then they knelt, showing respect. In kind, I jumped down from my little perch and helped to kill the boss. This was a completely emergent social interaction that really spiced up some otherwise pretty boring quests, and wouldn't have happened if the game didn't have robust non-verbal communications tools. Dark Souls does the same thing. The only way to communicate with players is either through emote gestures or indirectly through signs left on the ground. This leads to a lot of really fun social gameplay that gels surprisingly well with the hope triumphing over oppressive darkness motifs of the series. Stuff like organising fight clubs, playing pranks with the soapstone signs that get people killed, or creating cool inside jokes. By giving players tools that are abstract enough to be useful in a lot of situations, but tailored such that it's difficult to interpret them in a hostile way like you can with Anduin's sarcastic voice,
my apologies.
Players can have much more fun interacting with each other and won't have to resort to abusing other unrelated mechanics in order to get their thoughts across. Everyone who's played a shooter, after all, knows about teabagging, where players will crouch up and down on a defeated opponent in the ultimate phallocentric show of humiliation. It's not just crouching that gets abused either. Pretty much any mechanic or system a video game has to offer can be used to make a statement. And the late great Jeff Freeman even coined the term time to dick, which measures how long it takes for a player to use a system like dropped items or terraformed Earth to make, you guessed it, an elephant with a cold. Trying to completely lock this stuff down will drive anyone insane and usually does more harm than good. I think the games with the most successful communication systems are the ones that make communication flexible and fast enough such that this sort of behaviour isn't really needed and players can express frustration or animosity in a constructive way. A great way to do this is through dedicated taunts like you'd find in fighting games. Emotes that are specifically designed to be slightly cheeky and inflammatory, but not outright mean, allowing players to satiate the impulse to mess with an opponent without making things toxic. When taunts are embraced by the designers, they can even become a part of the mind-gamey high-level strategy of competitive games, and there is a brilliant Core A video on exactly that subject that I will link down below. This brings me neatly onto the other side of the coin, namely tactical communication. Talking about your feelings is all well and good, but multiplayer games thrive on letting players engage with the fun of strategizing and teamwork. In competitive games, like shooters, MOBAs or RTS, you need to communicate tactical information quickly and efficiently, and for the reasons I brought up earlier, neither voice chat nor text are particularly ideal. Luckily, there are a variety of ways to handle this, but they all center around making conversation streamlined and efficient by cutting human ambiguity out of the equation. For example, the Tribes games, now murdered by Hi-Rez, pioneered what's called the VGS system, which are a set of short-form communications options that allow players to send pre-written messages using only a few key presses. For example, V, then A for attack, then T for turret, sends a message saying that we should attack the enemy turrets. V, F for flag, then D for defend is our flag needs defending. Typing in VGS itself makes your character say Shazbot, which is a weird reference to a 1970s Robin Williams sitcom where he played an alien.
Shazbot.
I've got no idea why either. Dota 2, in spite of its community's incredible toxicity, also has flexible short-form communication. Alt-clicking on any element of the game's UI, from your health to an enemy's spells to an item on the floor, will immediately send a status update to all of your allies, keeping them in the loop or announcing your intentions in a fraction of the time it would take to type it. And in the Total War games, you can even draw on the map to show your allies which flanks to strike at, where to place their battle lines, and oh look! It's another elephant! On top of being way more efficient, these sorts of systems can also help to curb toxicity. Unlike simple typing, there's almost no room for misinterpretation or aggressive language, and responses can be very quick, meaning that there's no time for players to stew and get even angrier in between messages. The best example of tactical communication, however, comes in the form of Apex Legends' ping system. Yeah, I never thought that a highly competitive fast-paced shooter where you're shackled to other people that is played almost exclusively by Twitch wannabes would have amazing social communications tools, but it's 2020 now. Anything can happen. See, by holding down your middle mouse button, or the appropriate controller button, you can bring up a wheel of context-sensitive communications options to quickly and concisely talk to your teammates. See an enemy? Give them a ping and they'll be automatically flashed up. Want to propose a location to scout out next? Ping on the map. Want to show that an area has already been looted and there are probably enemies about? Ping on an open door or supply crate, and the game will do it for you. It's simple, effective, and most importantly of all, locational. In games without pings, you have to rely on fiddly, subjective descriptions like, that building over there, no, not that one, the one I'm looking at, no, not the one over there, the one to the left of it, no, the other, your left, not my left, oh, we're dead. Whereas in Apex, you can just immediately point it out for your teammates, and not only will it appear on their screen, they'll also get an audio reminder that your character announces it over the comms as well.
Way out there like little cucarachas.
You can even request items, confirm you spotted allied pings, and thank other players to ensure that you're always on the same page, massively cutting down the chances for miscommunication. Unfortunately though, even a system as good as Apex's will never eliminate toxicity completely, because internet dickery isn't just a systems problem, it's also a people problem. And that's why no matter how good your communications tools are, people are still going to use them to be jerks. What's more, our usual moderation tools like banning, muting and reports don't really address this problem, because in order for them to work, somebody has to have already been toxic and someone has to have already been offended. They're punitive and not really very preventative. Like I discussed earlier, I think the best way to reduce this kind of toxicity is to reward people for building positive relationships instead of validating their anger with an argument or a punishment. To this end, lots of games offer incentives for being nice, like Gwent, the Witcher card game. In card games, it's very easy to get angry at your opponent and imagine that they're some sort of cheater or that they've just so happened to draw exactly the right cards at exactly the right time, because there's often very few opportunities for direct communication and empathy between players. This often leads to situations where people try to screw with each other in ways that upset the game, like timing out your opponent or being rude with emotes. To circumvent this, at the end of each game of Gwent, you have an opportunity to push this button and to give your opponents a little bit of cash. There's basically no downside to doing this, so you'll probably do it a lot, but it serves as a nice incentive to play nice and a reminder that you're both here for the same reason, the good old free-to-play grind. In Final Fantasy XIV, if you queue for dungeons with random players and beat it successfully, you'll have a chance to give another player on your squad a commendation for being helpful, nice, or just for playing well. Once you reach certain commendation thresholds, you can unlock stuff like cool pets, a crown, and if you manage to get 3000, you get this, and I do not use the term lightly, heckin' chonker good boy to ride around. In MMO dungeons, it's easy to blame a wipe and lost progress on your teammates, and commendation systems like this one serve as a reward for not indulging in those impulses and making everyone feel welcome. My favourite example of a game that encourages positive social interactions, however, is one that you might not have guessed. It's not a hugely popular game nowadays, and it's not a game that you can play with your friends. It's the gorgeously, groundbreakingly fantastic social adventure game, Journey, by That Game Company. No, not that one. That one. Yeah. In Journey, the critically acclaimed game that I unintentionally ripped off, you're shackled to a companion throughout the entire length of the game, and in certain parts of the story, you're even reliant on them. But thanks to Journey's brilliant approach to communication, I always felt like I was totally in sync with my buddy and sharing in the sheer joyfulness of the game, even if I couldn't actually talk to them. See, in Journey, the only real form of communication you have is to sing or jump up and down, and that means the only emotions and ideas it's really possible to convey are very simple and are ultimately driven by the context of the game. When me and one of my friends found a hidden secret in a cave, the singing became a, "Hey, look over here," and then it turned into, "Wow, oh, isn't this cool?" When we became separated, we used long, loud notes to find each other again, and when we were getting chased by a big scary monster, it became a way of expressing our fear. In Journey, there's no need to strategize or share complex information, so all of your communication reflects the simple joy of running, flying, and sliding around its beautiful world. But that's not all. Some spoilers forthcoming. The game is ancient, but if you've somehow not played it and still care, skip to this timestamp. Singing can be used to charge up scraps of fabric you see around the world, including your friend's cape, which you both use to fly. So by sticking together and communicating with little chirps and hums a lot, you can explore much more efficiently and find way more cool things to get excited about. Later on in the game, in the Ice Mountain, or when there are enemies about, you're also encouraged to stick together to keep each other's health from dropping or to keep each other alive when the cold sets in. In the second to last level, you've got to make your way across a desolate, wintry wasteland, and inevitably, you and your friend will be forced together, spamming the sing button in a desperate, futile attempt to stay alive as your voices get weaker and weaker. In this moment, I was more connected to my anonymous companion than I have been to characters in multi-million-dollar blockbuster games as we fought on against the odds, powered only by our shared bond. And in the final stage of the game, where you get to zoom up the mountain, that spammy communication turned into an expression of joy and triumph as we raced up the temple structure to our final destination together. Journey is a magical experience because it uses absurdly simple tools to bring players together and encourage them to act as a team, all without using any words at all. Some of these people I met on my adventure may very well have been puppy-kicking Nazi Game Maker's Toolkit fans, and I didn't really care. Journey gives players no reason to come into conflict and brings out our best selves, and really, that's what we've got to keep in mind. Video games can only go so far on their own to remove toxicity. When you strip away the sleek systems and rewards for being nice, all that really remains is human nature. Players and developers need to work together to make digital spaces more welcoming to people, and the best ways to do that can be found in some of the games we looked at today. We need to encourage players to bond and express their emotions, remove barriers to quick and efficient communication, and most importantly of all, encourage positive interactions by minimizing sources of conflict. We all have the potential to be rude, toxic, and abusive, but we also have it in us to be empathetic and understanding. And while it might be harder, using those skills will make games nicer to play for everyone in the long run. So if you could just stop playing video games and just leave me alone, thereby raising the niceness saturation to 100%, that'd be great. The gaming community, which is to say just me, thanks you for your service. Hi and thanks for watching. This video has been in the works for a while, has gone through several iterations, and is finally at a point where I'm kind of happy with it. I hope you enjoyed. For those who don't know, at the end of every video, I like to plug a cool internet thing and also give a shout out to my top tier patrons. My plug for this video is the great podcast This Game Changed My Life, hosted by Julia Hardy and Aofi Wilson, covering a bunch of really interesting stories about video games and real life intersecting. It's kept me sane during some really boring editing work. It's great. Give it a listen on the BBC website. I also need to give a shout out to my top tier mysterious benefactors. If you'd like to join them, consider throwing me a few bucks on Patreon. Those cool people are Alex Deloch, Asaran, Baxter Heel, Big Chess, Bodhi, Brian Notariani, Daniel Metjes, David Dumitrascu, David Sester, Dirk Jan Karambeld, Doodlehog, Evie, Elliot Godsich, George Sears, Ibathon, Janos Fakete, Jordan, Joshua Binswanger, Kai Gillespie, Lee Berman, Lucas Slack, Lunar Eagle 1996, Mace Window 54, Max Filipov, Nox, Patrick Romberg, Philby the Bilby, Prospero, Ray's Dad, Samuel Vanderplatz, Sheldon Hearn, Steve Riley, Stratager in Ultima, and Chow. Okay, thanks for watching. The next video should be a little bit less research heavy if all goes to plan, so I will see you soon. Bye!